In 1099, the Middle East was a patchwork of shifting borders. The rising and falling empires had created an unstable web of power, leaving many regions in a state of constant transition. At the center of this terrain sat Jerusalem. The city was a target of a centuries-old competition, as it held the sites most sacred to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Within a single square mile, the city's walls protected the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Temple Mount, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Controlling these gates meant controlling access to these shrines. This concentration of holy sites made Jerusalem the place where the interests of 3 continents collided. From Western Europe, an army of knights and soldiers began moving east. They carried crosses on their shields, driven by a religious conviction that had mobilized thousands for what would become the First Crusade. Their ultimate objective was incredibly specific: to reach the Levant and forcibly take Jerusalem from the control of the Fatimid Caliphate. To reach it, they had to survive an overland journey that stretched from Europe across the Anatolian Plateau and down into the Syrian desert. The distance turned the mission into a grueling test of logistics. Simply reaching the city was a feat of endurance, and those who survived the march would arrive at the walls with little left but their desperation to finish the journey. Commanders like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond IV of Toulouse, and Tancred of Hauteville led a force that originally numbered in the tens of thousands, but the march itself thinned their ranks. Long before they saw a defensive garrison, thousands died from disease and the lack of consistent food supplies. The survivors were shaped by these losses. The years of attrition and the sight of their comrades dying along the road created a hardened, uncompromising mindset among the remaining troops. By the time they reached the Holy Land, the army had paid a high price in lives. To return home without the city would have meant all those deaths were for nothing. In June 1099, the Crusaders arrived to find Jerusalem protected by a massive system of outer stone walls and defensive trenches. The city's governor, Iftikhar al-Dawla, had prepared for their arrival. He reinforced the gates and gathered enough supplies to wait out a long-term siege from behind the fortifications. Outside the walls, the Crusaders faced a different enemy. It was the height of summer, and local water sources were poisoned or drained, leaving the attackers in a landscape with almost no shade or hydration. Standard siege logic began to fail. Because the attackers were dying of thirst and heat faster than the defenders inside, they were forced to launch an immediate assault or face total collapse. To get over the walls, the Crusaders built massive wooden siege towers. These machines brought soldiers level with the stone battlements. On July 15th, under heavy fire, the towers reached the walls. Soldiers dropped their bridges, neutralizing the city's primary height advantage. The defensive line fractured. Crusader troops poured over the wooden planks and down into the streets, finally ending the weeks of stalemate. The battle ended, but the violence did not. Accounts from the time describe a systematic massacre that took place within the city, making the fall of Jerusalem one of the most violent moments in medieval history. With the city captured, the political landscape shifted. Godfrey of Bouillon took control of the city as its new leader. He notably refused the title of king, choosing instead to be called the Defender of the Holy Sepulchre, a title that emphasized his role as a guardian of the faith. This map shows the result of the victory. A string of European-controlled territories was now situated directly between the established Islamic empires of the region. This new presence ensured future conflict. It set the stage for leaders like Saladin to later mobilize their own forces and retake the city. The capture of Jerusalem in 1099 did not end the crusade. Instead, it established a pattern of religious war and retaliation that would define the region for the next 2 centuries.